So, gay plus Jew, rabbi question mark?
Yeah, totally. Well, that was like, so here's the thing.
Today we sit down with Liz Glazer. She's a hysterical Jewish gay comedian who was recently just on Fallon and launched her new hit special.
In this conversation, we mostly talked about what it's like to be gay in the Jewish community, how Liz even got on Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show, because that's pretty crazy. Generally, what it's like to be a comedian and Liz's kind of take on life. I think you'll enjoy.
So I grew up, my parents sent me to Orthodox day school, and they were not Orthodox at home. Okay. So it's like an education and everything I was doing wrong at all times is like the kind of funny way that I think of it. But it sort of felt like that because they were both Holocaust survivor children. So 4 out of 4 of my grandparents, Holocaust survivors. And they, my parents like wanted me and my brother to know who we are. That was the way that they said it, which is such a like Jewish, like over dramatic, like know where you came from, like know that type of thing. Right. And later in life, I would learn that they took a tour of a Solomon Schechter, so a conservative, elementary school. And I guess at the time they took the tour, there was a leak in the ceiling and there were classes in the hallway. And my mother going through, was like, I'm not going to pay all this money for you to be in class in the hallway. And so the other option was Mariah, which is in Englewood and is Orthodox. And so that's where I went, met my best friend to this day, Shira. And then after that, I liked it. Like we weren't Orthodox at home. Like I would learn Monday through Friday, you don't eat like non-kosher and you don't drive on Shabbos, and then we had treif silverware. So we had milchik and fleishik, but also treif silverware where we would go get pizza, and I would eat pepperoni pizza at the time. I'm vegetarian or pescatarian now, but like at the time I ate that and we ate it with the treif silverware. Okay. And so this was like what I knew always growing up. Okay. I can feel you judging me.
That's so confusing.
It makes so much sense to me.
Well, here's the thing. Really? It does?
It's because there are a lot of people that are in that boat.
I think so too.
But just have the tray of silverware.
You mean only?
Just own it. No, have all of it.
Yeah, totally. Well, we did.
Just do all of it.
So I totally hear you about that. And I think that this is the beauty of the internet, because some of the content that I've noticed has gotten me, in touch with like people who've connected with like videos I've made. Because I made a video where I had like bushy hair and it was like a few days before Lag BaOmer. And it was basically just a front facing video where I was like, people are like, how Jewish are you? And I said some of the stuff that I said, about my background or whatever. And I was like, all I can tell you is my hair looks like this, but I'm waiting till Friday to cut it. And because Friday was Lag BaOmer. And so whatever you want to say about how Jewish I am or how not that anybody is really talking about it, whatever I think of myself in terms of my Jewish identity, I still have it in mind always. So to your point about how it's confusing. So thank you. I get it. But I think it's actually both. It's like totally like a lot of people are in that boat. Like I did a show. It was I think it may have been at Ramaz or KJ or something. I went to Ramaz growing up. And so I actually like knew a lot of the people in the audience because like they're parents of kids who are there. And I went to like Mariah with them. And one of my friends from Mariah, who now is more religious than she was when we were growing up, like I have this story that I tell on stage sometimes about how it was first grade. Shira, who I mentioned, who was Orthodox, she was like, hey, what'd you do over the weekend on Monday? And I'm like 6. And so I was like, well, we went to the park and the zoo and ice skating and roller skating and the movies and whatever. And she's like, you did all of that on Sunday? Because that, of course, like that's all she knows. And I think at the time I was like, yes, because I did, I was like, I don't know how to get out of this. But my friend at that show was like, the other thing that was so much a part of the experience was like the shows that were on TGIF, which was like the Friday night lineup of shows. And at the time, like we didn't have, TiVo or DVR or whatever.
TiVo's a throwback.
Well, yeah, but even prior to is a throwback. I'm 45. And so this was before any of that. But we would know what was happening on Full House or, Family Matters, I think, and like Just the 10 of Us. Like these are shows that were on at that time. And so it was only the kids who were like not Shomer Shabbos, but it was all a secret. that would know about that. So that's also, I was like, oh yeah, that's such a relatable experience. But I've noticed from the internet that there are people who occupy that space of like either in secret or whatever it is. Like for us, it wasn't that much of a secret because we lived not in walking distance to a shul. And so anybody with a brain, you know, and I mean, I don't mean to denigrate my classmates. Like we were 6. Like it's not like they're being like, well, how could you possibly, you know, like literal 6-year-olds. But as we got older, I think it was more obvious that it's like, well, obviously they can't be walking to shul because what shul would they even be walking to? Like they'd be walking until Monday, you know, to shul.
People do that. People do that.
Right. But I mean, it was just sort of like whatever. But there was a rabbi at Moriah. Actually, I was just emceeing an event for Manhattan Day School and somebody actually was his nephew. And so I was able to like really like
Jewish
remember.
geography.
I know. Well, that's the thing about doing shows that I love this about doing shows for like, especially Orthodox crowds, but even just regular Jewish crowds. Like I was doing one at the JCC Manhattan last night. And I have a joke where it's like, the setup is like I went to Orthodox Jewish day school. I went to a conservative synagogue growing up, and now I'm married to a Reform rabbi. And the punchline is either so I'm Catholic or so I'm Hasidic or, you know, whatever. Either way, it works in different crowds. But I've learned when I'm doing a show for really Jewish audiences, if you don't pause and say, like, just an aside, like I went to Orthodox Jewish day school, Moriah, then Ramaz, the crowd cannot handle not knowing the information. And then I also am like, and after the show, we can do the geography of who do you know and who do I know, and we'll like link up about that because it's too distracting. Because you see, I say Moriah Ramaz, and then they're like, oh, I wonder if she knows Jacob, whatever, you know, whoever. And so anyway, but I don't remember which thread I was on, but do you? That would be impressive.
I'm lost.
You're lost?
Wait.
In terms of which thread we're on.
I know, but I was hurdling us to somewhere, but I do love doing shows for, Rabbi Applebaum. That's what it is. Rabbi Applebaum.
Unexpected
I love
thread.
Shalom. May his memory be for a blessing. He was old when I was in first grade. And so he's been dead a long time at this point, but a really, really wonderful guy. But this is the reason that my parents sent me to Moriah, is because they were like, to him, he was the principal of the school, like, well, obviously we're not Orthodox. We live not within walking distance, which he could figure out. So how is that going to work? And Rabbi Applebaum was like a very, like, he was Orthodox and not like Chabad pluralistic, but just like very open and inviting, and was just like, I really think you will and she will be comfortable here, even though you guys like obviously aren't Orthodox in the same way that a lot of the people are. And I'm so glad and grateful for that, because truly, like I was on the Tonight Show last week and had a watch party, and there were multiple people from Moriah there, like from my first grade class. And like, these are people, like my core friend group is 7 of us, and all Orthodox, all day school, whatever, some of whom I went to high school and college with, you know. So it's, even though, yes, it in a way on paper, it looks like it could be confusing in the sense of like home is different from school, I do think that it informed my personality in a way where I think I'm like more open to like, okay, so this person does this and this person, you know, like it's okay. Like rules are there and important. And also not everybody in every community observes them exactly the same way. And that's okay.
Do you have like anxiety?
Yeah. I mean,
classic Jewish anxiety?
I think so. I mean, I think it's like, you know, whatever. Are we recording, DJ?
I can't hear anything.
You have to leave this in. You have to leave this in the episode. In the episode. Yeah. Leave this in the episode. Don't edit it.
No, we have to.
You have to leave it in.
We have no choice. You leave us.
Well, I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm just saying, I think it's adorable, and I think it's like fine. And I do think that it's very Jewish.
What?
The anxiety of whether we are or aren't recording and what is or isn't. I have a 2-year-old, and, you know, she speaks, but like, you know, I think it would be the rare parent who's not like at all thinking of like, what is language and how, she does this thing now. It's so cute where my dad was a Latvian man with like a lot of like Russian man energy. And my daughter, who never knew him because of when he died and when she was born, respectively.
I have no basis of what a Latvian man is.
So he was really like kind of, honestly, his vibe was like sort of Israeli, like just sort of gruff and like, it's this way, whatever, like that. And, but my daughter will add an oosh or an ish to the ends of words. And so for a bottle, at first she said babu, which was fun and cute. But then recently it became baboosh, which is like honestly amazing. I'm like, that is such a better word. And so I'm mommy, but then recently I became mommish.
Mommy's just not bad.
Mommy's.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's so Jewy.
She's
it's so
from.
Russian. Exactly. She's super from. So anyway, but that's a side note. But yeah, I think like I love, imagine if I spilled water. They were so hectic before the spill. God knows. I mean, I have
Next
to
thing
like
the table
really
splits in half.
correct. Exactly. Wow. The arc of this podcast. So, but yeah, I do really enjoy performing for Orthodox crowds because they don't expect me to get as many of the references. Like one example recently, it was a really fun one. It was during Omer and pre-log. Okay. So we're still in like full Omer. And it was
I love the lingo, by the way.
Thanks. And it was in a lobby of a hotel, but like a side room of the lobby, but not with like doors that were at all soundproof. And there was the loudest jazz band you've ever heard in your life playing like next to the room. Okay. And it was like not really addressed because I think like to all of the other comedians' credit, like they didn't want to, say a bad, mean thing about the setup of the show. And I think it would have come off that way or whatever. And I was going last. It just happened to be. And so I was like, oh my God, they're not going to expect. So I said, the real reason that we all came together tonight, I mean, of course, especially in these times, it's good to laugh, blah, blah, blah. But if we're being honest, this is just the loophole for Omer that we all needed. We're here for the jazz band, which we all hear. I mean, it was so loud, but like, you can't just go to the jazz band. So we'll go to the comedy show next to the jazz band and then we'll hear the whole jazz band like music. We're there. Exactly.
Minus the guilt.
Exactly. Minus the guilt.
Because it's annoying me now.
Right. And but I think, it was funny. It was like a good observation, I think, about the moment and, it like worked for that crowd. But also it's like the idea that like I would come with that joke, I think was like, wait, how does she know like the level of prohibitions at that level? You know what I mean?
It makes it funnier, if anything.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of think a bit about it as like, I always know what I'm doing wrong because, and I think that that's a joke, but there is kind of like an underbelly, like a depth to it because, one of the things, because I know you wanted to talk about being gay, not you, but like for me.
Sorry, Mom.
But is because my parents, who were far less religious than either Mariah or Ramaz, the schools that I went to, agreed with school about gayness, about homosexuality. And so when I came out, my parents were like totally upset about it, right? And that I use that as a setup
when
to
you were
my
11,
joke.
right?
Well,
Or
I came out
21?
when I was 21.
That's what
yeah.
it was. I
Oh
did the math
God.
wrong.
Look
11
at
and
you.
21 is
It was 44 to 20.
Oh yeah, I do have a lot of
23.
number stuff.
23 years ago,
Yeah. Right. Because
There
of
we go.
that part
And
of
then
the
now
joke.
your mom's
Yeah.
gay.
Well,
Is
but
that
she's
real?
not. No,
Oh, okay,
she's
well.
not gay. Honestly, I wish she was because she is. Well, my dad died, and she is like dating, and I don't like wish she was gay because I feel like maybe it would be easier to find someone if she was like at least bisexual. Okay, I'm not trying to.
That's statistic.
Widens the pool.
Right, exactly. So, and also like, she's like, well, he has to be Jewish, which I get, but also then it also like, there's not a ton of people. What I want to do with my mom is do a video series where I just ask her questions and then maybe it'll go viral and maybe somebody will like show it like, oh, actually she's like pretty amazing. Cause she is. I love my mom.
Something else you could do. My friend did this. He's a comedian in Israel. He started one of those like seminary, yeshiva dating things where you submit that you want to like, your profile.
Okay.
Then he would just go through the profiles and see if there's anybody that he would want to go on a date with.
Oh, wow. That's funny. Yeah. I mean, the only thing that really reminds me of is I know this woman who now is straight, but she had like a lesbian Shabbat dinner.
1 second, who now is straight?
Well, yeah, but that's many years later and kind of a side story that isn't mine to tell. But a million years ago, basically, when my wife met her first wife, because my wife is previously divorced, like married and divorced. And so she met her wife, as did a lot of other Jewish lesbians who they would go to this Shabbat dinner. But the reason that I bring it up is because she
I thought you were
started.
Inviting me to the dinner.
They don't exist anymore. She's straight. But is because the person who started it was like, I want to meet my wife. And so I'll organize this whole thing. And, the people will come through. And then, the irony is she ended up meeting her wife like through another way. And now they're not together because she's straight. But anyway, it's not my story to tell. It's really not. But anyway.
Generally, obviously, Judaism in the Orthodox world at least frowns upon being gay. Do you feel a lot of pressure? Because you're still in the Jewish community.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm just trying to imagine what your life is like. Do you feel a lot of pressure when you walk into any room?
Well, I do, but I don't know because of that. Like just living inside of here, there's a lot of pressure at all times, DJ. That said, I don't know if I specifically feel it about being gay and Jewish. So, where I occupy space most of the time, my wife is a Reform rabbi. And so it's a Reform shul. And so I don't feel that kind of, because there's not that adherence to like, halacha, I think, right? And so in that sense, it's different. It just is in a Reform or Reconstructionist or even in some cases conservative environment, it would just be less that way, right? I also, I don't know exactly how or why, but like I've always been me. And so like, I don't know, like sometimes people are surprised, like, so all of your friends are like straight Orthodox, I say girls, but like women. And it's like, yeah, like those are my best friends. And I don't need them to, keep Shabbos in the same exact way, nor do they need me to keep Shabbos in the same way that they do. But I know, like, we have a group text. I don't text on Shabbos because I know I look online, I Google when is Shabbos over, and then that's, good vach and whatever. And then we start. But like, I don't know, I guess because of the background of like going into Mariah when I was 6 years old and recognizing that everybody has a different life from what I have at home. I just was like, okay, like, so that's the way it is. And I don't have to be the same as everybody in order to like make deep connections on another plane. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes it. It's almost simpler than I would have expected.
Sure.
But I want to know if there was a time when it wasn't like that.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
Just to just be born with it, like, everyone will love me the way I am.
Right. Yeah.
That would be crazy if you were just born that way.
Totally. No, I definitely wasn't. And like, I definitely, I've been in therapy for 19 years, like with the same therapist. And so,
that's a whole relationship.
I know. And my brother's like, you gotta stop like that. But at this point it's so valuable because she like almost has a PhD in me specifically. I think she's an amazing therapist, but in addition, she knows like, oh, that's like in 2008 when this was happening. I'm like, oh, you're right, which is so valuable. It's almost like she's like a Rav of me, right? Like it's just she can pull from all of these experiences that I've had specifically, some of which I don't even remember in the detail that she does.
People talk about ChatGPT that way.
Yes.
Like I could. But this is way deeper because she has your whole
Does she have like filing cabinets of your life?
Probably, but I don't know. She takes notes. That happened like a few years in, which I was like, I wonder what that's about. But she's very boundaried.
Referencing 2018 versus 2002.
Yeah. Then she really is a rush. She's like looking, at the notes. But anyway, so I think I definitely didn't like come into the world thinking everybody loves me and feeling accepted at all times. Like the opposite. That said, I do think that this sort of inherent conflict between home and school did help me because it allowed me to understand that, okay, if this crowd isn't into me, whether that was home or school at the moment, then another crowd might be. And I think it gave me a kind of like, thick skin or fortitude as a stand-up. I mean, there's a lot of rejection in what I do. And, I really don't not to say I never take it personally, because that's not true. I think that would be like odd and insane. But I think it's easier for me because I'm like, I never expected that I was going to be totally okay in every situation.
But also you came out at 21,
I
right?
did.
Which is not like 15.
Right. And so, I think one thing to note is it was a different time. And so I think that now you have kids, there was no one in my Ramaz class who was out. Not one person, not me, not anyone. And that, I don't know Ramaz specifically or, yeshiva high schools, but I can't imagine that that's still the case, right? There was no gay student alliance. There wasn't even a debate about shutting it down. It just was not a thing, right?
How do you feel about that? The whole YU thing, or you just don't care?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I don't care, but I think that it's a valuable thing to have. I do think I don't know enough about the culture at YU to comment on it because I appreciate that they're coming from the perspective of okay, well, based on the rules, this is what but I also think it's does this help you in terms of endearing yourself to people who you want to invite into a Jewish space? And so, I used to know, now I can't remember her last name, but there was an organization called Footsteps, and I don't know that it exists anymore, but the goal of it was a nonprofit. And it was started by somebody who was ultra Orthodox, went off the derech, and it was English classes and math classes for people who were going out of the Jewish, ultra Orthodox Jewish world and wanted to get jobs. And the thing about it, it was like a bridge where the alternative was jumping off a bridge, God forbid, right? Because that was what was happening. There was, kids who didn't have an education, didn't have any skills. And what were they going to do? And then they ended up really in dire situations. And so then this organization was there to actually help you get your life together. And so when I think about the YU issue with the Gay Student Alliance or, the LGBTQ Alliance or whatever, it's this is a population that feels shunned, and there are really deep consequences that are life or death in those situations. And I recognize halacha, of course, but also there's pikuach nefesh. And I would think that if it's a situation where it's this is a kid, I mean, it's school. So they're kids who, it's sure, I guess you could shame people and just be listen, Hashem said, the Talmud said, the Shulchan Aruch says that you're bad, so peace out. That's a way. But also aren't we coming together for the purpose of we all are in Hashem's image. We're all, worthy people. And if the alternative is just shunning people so that they, God forbid, kill themselves, that can't be the right answer.
Part of,
yeah,
at least for me, the way I think people are approaching it is they'll hear that same pikuach nefesh argument or side,
right?
But then not really internalize it at all because they have no idea what. It's almost like a disbelief. There's no way that's happening.
Yeah,
I don't
I
believe
think
that someone will want to not exist anymore because.
Yeah, but then I mean, it's hard. I think that that's willful. Just oblivion, because you can look at data.
But it's so hidden in the Jewish community.
Yes, 100%, which is why it's even more dire, right? And I get that you're not saying that's your position. You're saying these are other people's position. I understand that. But so I don't mean this against you specifically, but I think that has to be the argument, at least from the other side. And I really, truly believe it, knowing people and, being in a family that experienced those really hard conversations. And, just thinking okay, it's possible to respect Jewish life from a halachic perspective without deeply shaming people for not adhering to the letter of the law. Well,
I think what I'm trying to understand more, and I think other people might benefit benefit from it also is
Sure.
that it's not just how can these people not follow halacha.
Right.
It's they're actively choosing to do this because no one's born gay. And
Sure.
They're just like, they think it's cool to be gay, so they're
Sure.
doing this.
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, like we're talking about adolescence. And so, I always think that the thing about you're born or you're not born this way or that way is sort of a red herring because we have no idea. We have no idea. That's just the truth of it. And no one has any idea. And thinking that is like, to me, the most not Jewish way of thinking about it, because it's like, who told you? You have like direct testimony about knowing this or not knowing this or whatever. And so I find that position hard. Like it's to me, it's untenable. But then in addition to that, it's like the question becomes like, how do we support those who are in our community? And I just think it comes down to me from like, you can either shame and shun, which I just don't think is like the answer. I don't think that from a perspective of like, I mean, I can appreciate that. Okay, if a kitchen is kosher, you're not going to bring non-kosher food in it because the rules of kashrut mandate that can't coexist here. But the truth of it is that is not the same as like, if a gay person is here, then it's not like the kitchen is contaminated, metaphorically. And so the question is like, can we find a way to embrace within our community, right? And so, I think about there's a wonderful person and comedian, Dana Friedman, who is an Orthodox trans person. And she is so Orthodox and so trans. And you would meet her and she looks like a girl from Central, right? And it's like such a beautiful thing because she loves her Orthodoxy. And thankfully, she's found in 6th Street Community Synagogue, with Rabbi Gav Bellino, Ramaz alum, an amazing guy, a community that supports, like, we love davening, we love, halacha, we love Hashem, whatever. And also, we're not going to shun you.
What do you think support looks like?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, it's almost
millions
like
of dollars in a bank account.
letting a comedian come up on stage in an Orthodox shul would just be like, now we're saying you're allowed to be gay, and we can't do that.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, here's my thing about that. It's like, you think too highly of what like allowing is, because it's like clearly I've attended assemblies in school and at shul and whatever. And it's like, clearly you're not adhering to like the message of every single word that comes out of this person's mouth. It's not like you're saying this is your rabbi or this is the head of the board. This is a comedian. And in the same way that you might not laugh at every joke, it's not like you're saying like, and we now think that being gay is okay because we had Liz do comedy at our shul. I mean, if that's the standard, then I think that probably you should look at the rest of your speakers calendar.
Why do you think a lot of Jews are taking it that way? Of whenever there's an opportunity of where there is like a gay person who has some sort of any opportunity. It's like, it's because they support it and they embrace it and they endorse it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm having this conversation. I haven't experienced I haven't experienced the resistance that you're describing, like at least in ways that I'm aware of. Like, are there shuls who wouldn't hire me to do comedy at the shul dinner because I'm gay? Maybe. I don't know what they are. I have no idea. I'm not privy to those conversations, nor do I want to be. The truth is, it's like, I have performed in Orthodox spaces and I've done very well. And I think that that's like, because I've worked at being a comedian and also to your point, like I get a lot of the jokes and I'm of the world and, whatever. But I don't know of all of the conversations that I don't know about. If there's like a shul that's like, well, we would hire her, but she's gay.
Also,
maybe.
Are you Orthodox?
No.
And you're not trying to be Orthodox.
No.
So I think that's also a different position of.
Yeah.
I feel like it might get a little bit more confusing, like what you mentioned.
Yeah.
With being trans and being Orthodox, where that could get a little bit more tricky.
Yeah, it could. And I think that for somebody who occupies that space, it's like really important to find a community because like you want to be able to live your life in that way, and you want to live your life Jewishly. And if that's your desire for your life, then I think it's great that there are communities that support that.
Onto Fallon.
Yes.
Because that just blew my mind that you got on that. I see.
Yeah.
Like it used to be Ellen. People would get on Ellen. It's just you go viral and all of a sudden next day you see them on Ellen.
Yeah.
Great. But the Tonight Show.
Sure.
This past week the past 2 weeks had Benson Boone, had this big like star actor.
Yeah.
You don't just wind up on the Tonight Show by accident. So how did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it was, many years of like doing comedy. And then I think like the very short answer is I submitted a set and they accepted it.
Where do you submit a set?
So you can email. You can email, but
a transcript or a video?
A transcript. For the Tonight Show, it is a transcript. So I mean,
so tough.
Yeah, true.
Laugh.
Yeah, well, you don't say laugh in the transcript, but like, the longer answer really does boil down to like doing stand up for like a lot of years. And like, for me, I went to the Laughing Skull. You're from Atlanta. So this was in Atlanta, Laughing Skull Comedy Festival.
Laughing Skull?
Yeah, it's actually a club that sadly is about to close, I believe, but it's like this real institution. It's a great club. It's a great festival. And I have like big waitlist energy. Like I'm big, like, didn't like scrappy underdog. Like I have a million stories of every phase of life where it's like I was in off the wait list, whatever. So perhaps unsurprisingly, like I didn't get into Laughing Skull for like 5 years, I think, not exaggerating. And then the year that I ended up getting it, I was on the wait list, got off the wait list. I'm in the festival and it's the most industry I've ever performed for in my entire life. And so in one little room, like a great club is like a little room, laughs bounce off, all that. It's such a wonderful room, Laughing Skull. Was the booker for the Tonight Show, the guy who would become my manager, also, casting at Fox, the guy who books South by Southwest, the guy who books Netflix Is a Joke, the woman who was at the time the head of JFL and another head of Just for Laughs in Montreal. And more people who I either don't know or am forgetting. So much industry. So a lot of pressure. And as part of this festival, you do a few spots over the weekend, but then you have your industry showcase. And the industry showcase is when you're like on. And I happen to have a very good set for that. And it was, it's great. You have a great set at a time.
It wasn't this set that you did during the special and on Fallon?
No, I mean, it was like parts of it, but there were some other jokes. I think I have this like COVID joke that I did that I ended up doing crowd work because there was a woman who worked at the CDC who was like in the crowd. And then I did something about, it's basically that like, you can't cough anymore in public. That's kind of part of the joke. But anyway, so I did that and it went great. And then it turned out that my friend, a comedian, wanted to meet an industry person who I knew well. I go to introduce my friend to her. She was talking to the guy who would become my manager, Peter. And so then I'm talking to Peter because I introduced, Gus to Marianne. They're talking. I talked to Peter. Peter's like, because I had mentioned I was a lawyer in my set. Sorry. I mentioned that I was a lawyer in my set. And he's like, I also was a lawyer. He's like, I loved your set, blah, blah, blah. I was a lawyer too. And actually something a law professor, which was more particularly what I did, said to me changed my life. And I don't remember the substance of what it was, but I asked him, I was like, who was the professor? Because I was wondering if I knew the person. He says, this guy, Larry. I'm like, his office was next to mine. And I said, where did you go to law school? He says, Hofstra Law School, which is where I worked for 9 years. And then we had this like organic connection. Then we have lunch. He's from New York also. So we have lunch in New York. Then he becomes my manager. That same day, I also met Michael, who's the booker for the Tonight Show. Great guy. And at the time, like he was very complimentary about my set at Laughing Skull. So he had seen me perform. And so despite the fact that the submission itself is paper, is like a transcript, I don't know, because I definitely don't know the booking process for this Tonight Show. I only know my side of it. But I imagine that he's probably not booking people who he only has read the transcript, has never seen them perform in his life. So he's seen me and he's aware of my presence on stage and then the transcript, right? So then Peter and I start working together, it was like, whatever. however many, honestly, we met on October 7th of 2023. And this is like, so whenever somebody asks me about how long we've been working together, all I have to think is the number on anybody's yellow
just look at their status, their
yeah.
stories.
And it's like obviously the darkest of dark jokes. And it's not even a joke, but it's literally the truth because it happened to be on October 7th of 2023 that festival was happening. So anyway, so we start working together then. And then it was Feb of this year. So basically like a year and over a half later that he's like, you know, we should really submit a set. And so February 17, I email a set and then he sends it over to The Tonight Show. And then May 21st, so I actually was hosting the MDS Manhattan Day School dinner, which is, I was hosting it. It's at the Stand Up New York room where there's no reception. And so I'm getting these texts from Peter, hey, can you give me a call? And I was like, yeah, I'm hosting this thing. And like, you know, like a Jewish dinner like that, it goes on forever. So that's why I was like, it's going to be a while. There was like this auctioneer.
Chinese auction?
No, it was his name is Herb and he did you hear that?
No, definitely he's hearing it.
Yeah.
Oh, you are? Was it really loud?
No, it wasn't so loud.
Okay, good.
Just a dull thud.
Great, but it might be the headphones because they're quiet. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That could be
Yeah. Wow, I should work here. So anyway, so it just went on for a long time, the event. And so I'm getting these texts like, hey, I was like, I can text like, cause I was on the Wi-Fi, but I couldn't, you know, there was no reception. I couldn't leave cause I was hosting. And so
I thought you meant there's no like reception in the building.
Oh, no,
Not,
no.
phone
Like
reception.
Phone reception.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it just was like a long night. And then Herb, the auctioneer, who I got to know pretty well, and his wife, Diane, he was excellent, by the way. His company is called Mountain Auctioneering, which I know because I introduced him 3 separate times to come on stage, which was funny. But he ended up driving me home. But at first I was like, well, I think I should take the train because I was getting these texts like, hey, can you call me? Can you call me? And I was like, I can't call you yet. And so then I was going to take the train because I was like, well, I can call him from the train. Then I go over to Herb and Diane. I was like, I think I'm just going to take the train. Diane is like, what? You're not comfortable with us driving you home? And I was like, no, it's fine. So then I'm in the car with Herb and Diane for another hour. Okay. And then it's not until 11:15 that I finally get to my car. I text Peter. I'm like, hey, I got a ride with Herb the auctioneer and his wife, Diane. I'm so sorry. I'll call you tomorrow morning. And then he calls me at 11:38. And we don't have that kind of relationship, thank God. Like more boundary than 11:30 calls with your manager. But he was like, hey, what are you doing June 5th? And then that's when I found out. And so, well, actually, like that was when I found out the avails. But then the next day on the way to what turned out to be a celebratory mammogram, that's just what I was doing. I found out that I got it. Because the night before, they're like, oh, your set is in standards and practices, and the lawyers go through it and whatever. And then the next day.
Was this something you looked forward to for a while? Or was it just like, oh, yeah, Tonight Show?
No, I mean, I think that it's probably the rare comedian who doesn't have something in mind about it. Like it is the Tonight Show, like no offense, you know, to who I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like it's definitely like a thing. I appreciated, by the way, there were these 2 makeup artists, I believe Kim and Kaylee. They were great at the Tonight Show and they were touching up my makeup. And I said to them, I don't know, I was just like, felt really comfortable with them immediately. And I was like, I feel, and then they're like it's a dream. And I was like, yes. And they're like, it's the Tonight Show. And I was like, exactly. And they're like, and you know what? And you could tell that this was part of a larger conversation that they had been having, like in general. They're like, it's great the people who actually get that it's a big deal and who like aren't pretending. Like they told me some story about an unnamed person who I guess was a guest who was like on the phone the whole time that the makeup was being done and then was like, wait, I'm sorry, what show am I on? And they're like, no, it's the Tonight Show. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And what I was really happy with in terms of my appearance was like, I wrote myself a set that allowed me to really bask in the moment of it being a big deal. And like, you know, because the setup of like, I'm so happy to be here because it turns on, because I was Alice from the Brady Bunch, which of course is the joke part, but in order for me to set that up, because everybody says, I'm so happy to be here, whatever. But it's not always the setup to a joke. And because it was the setup to a joke, the fact that I was able to really take in the moment, I think like allowed
I don't know the Brady Bunch at all. I didn't realize it was a setup to a joke. I just, like after we were watching it, I looked up Alice from the Brady Bunch.
Well, you're the end of the joke.
They do kind of
that makes
sense. You're the end of the joke, which is the people who are like, so were you really her? But anyway, I mean, whatever. People watch the set, watch the special. So anyway, that's what I'm promoting. I know you were nervous that I'm not going to say it. The special's on YouTube. It's called Do You Know Who I'm Not? The set for Fallon is also on YouTube. They're both doing well, so it's not like I need you, but also I want you. I want you to watch it. I think it's good. But yeah, but you're the other part of the joke, which is the people who don't get it, which is,
the ones that go up to you after and say,
yes. Yeah, which is fine.
Part of from watching that special, what stood out is most of these, you see a comedian get on stage and they're just firing away. It's like very professional comedy.
Sure.
And then you pan to the crowd and they're just like, they're at a comedy show.
Yeah.
But here it looked like they just loved you.
Oh, yeah.
And there were people that knew you.
Yeah. I say that.
You said that too.
Yeah.
But you could see it in the crowd.
Yeah.
How are there 300? What do you say was 40 something?
39. Yeah. I mean, we had to strike some seats for the cameras. So, just in case anyone's like really medoctic about the number. But I mean, it was people. I mean, I was doing it 6 minutes from my house. So that definitely helps in terms of like knowing the crowd. But I think like I have never thought of myself as like, some kind of master joke writer, meaning like, I think I'm good at it. I think I have some zingers or whatever, but like for the most part, my strength or one of them, and of course I'm still like developing and learning about it, is like connecting. And so I think that establishing that kind of connection is probably like a thing that I do well, right? And that I can lean into for comedy. And so I try to capitalize on that skill, I guess.
When you were up there, was that a big show for you?
Yes.
Because also seeing a human being stand in front of a giant sign with their name on it, that's like the blinding lights.
Yes.
That's the big moment.
Well, I mean, and that's the genius of Josh Edelman, my director and editor, and the person who like really just took the reins in terms of the set and like the way it was shot, because we went through like, what is the theme of this special? And I was just like floored that this theater asked me to headline. And so we decided / he decided to like really lean into like, wouldn't it be ironic and funny to have a whole set whose theme is like, I can't even believe I'm here in front of the lights and the star, whatever. So it's intentional in terms of the set design.
How do you even get those letters? Like they're huge.
So it's like a company that, you could call for like a bat mitzvah. And I mean, as with anything, you can go like there was some company that was like charging $11,000 for letters, and then we got those for $695.
What a deal!
It was. I mean, Josh is good.
You should get big letters right over here.
Yeah, totally. Get big letters and then rent them out. I mean, there's schlepping in that business, right? But yeah, I mean, it basically you could rent them. I'll get you the name
or like across the wall.
Sure, but then they pick them up. Later they pick them up.
Renting.
Yeah. So the curtain too. The curtain was a whole thing. My God, that curtain, the stars in the back. It was like, I forget if it was $2,400 or $2,800 from Drape Kings, okay, which is in New Jersey.
What a name.
Yep. It's a whole factory. I mean, they are doing a business, okay?
How did they put the lights in there? It's like,
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it comes in it. Yeah. But it took up, I have a picture of me with my whole SUV full with like the big, coffin type boxes with the parts of that curtain. It was enormous. And I remember, so Josh is, he's like really good at sourcing. And I knew that every dollar we were spending was like the minimum, like he would find it for like only exactly what we needed. And I remember seeing that. I'm like, do we really need this curtain? And he's like, you do. I would not tell you you don't. And I'm so glad that we did it because like,
sick.
It does. Yeah. And it really like allows it to pop in the ways that he was hoping and needing for his edit. But he's amazing. I mean, he's a great comic and also a filmmaker and editor. And, he's just wonderful. Hire Josh Edelman. He did such a great job.
It really feels like this is all a launch pad for something because between that special, which was so impressive, and then the Tonight Show, a bunch of podcasts that you're on.
Sure.
What is coming up that you're like, all this huge
a lot of hype?
Yeah, it's a lot of nothing. No, I mean, I have always wanted to do a television show about my life. And so honestly, before I booked the Tonight Show, I looked at my calendar and I was like, these 2 weeks are kind of like a little bit, I have some room and some space. And I was like, you know, I've been wanting to do some like sketch content, not just sketch, but like kind of scenes that are like where you're watching it and you're like, what's this from? And the answer is like nothing yet.
Like a Key and Peele?
Well, that's a little more like straight sketch. I mean like, yes, the joke and the button and like just a minute reel, but where you're like, is this
like
is this a show? Yeah. Like, but, so that's what I want to do. And also I have like a whole other set that is like kind of ready to go. And I would like to find a place to tape like about 30 minutes. And then, you know, the thing, I mean, I don't mean this as a flex at all, but like the set went well, the Fallon, and when we were snuggling on the couch, like he did say, he's like, you have to come back, which I mean, was amazing to me.
And he's a comedy guy, right?
Yeah, it was amazing to hear that, but also I was like, okay, like I'll check, you know, like what, of course, like this is my dream. And,
so nonchalant.
Right. But so because of that, I mean, I really don't, and I hope it doesn't come off as like bragging in any way, because I truly don't mean it that way. But because of your question of like, what's next? It's like, well, I mean, you have somebody, you have Jimmy Fallon saying that, you know, it's not crazy to then get working on the next one. Because he said that. So it's
next
like, okay.
One being
the next set for, right. And then, so I think that, you know, the most immediate thing is like, you know, taking some of the jokes that are basically about early parenting, like parenting a really young baby and toddler that don't exist anywhere. Because basically like where I leave off in the Tonight Show set in the special is she's born, this is how that happened. And she's in daycare, basically being like a potato in daycare, right? And that's where we leave off in terms of the chronology. But, you know, Baruch Hashem and like I mean, this isn't wood. I knock on wood, even though it's gayish because, but it's not. And because I hedge my bets. Like I actually think it's very Jewish to knock on wood, because who's to say that the knocking or the not knocking, I mean, is it avodah zarah? I don't know. Because if it's avodah zarah, then it debunks what I'm saying. But I knock because I'm like, I'm just hedging my bets.
I didn't even know there was any conversation about it.
Well, I think it's like, no, I think actually what it comes from is you're checking a coffin to make sure that the body's not alive.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's that's the root of the superstition or whatever. But I'm just like, I'll do it. I'm going to find wood. I'm obsessive enough. I'll find it somewhere on my way out.
That'd be really bad.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, so thank God, you know, there are more stories, right? Because she has grown and, you know, more things happen, which means more jokes and stories that are funny and whatever. And so kind of like consolidating that into a 30-minute with a 5 to tease it, you know, similar to how we did this special with the 5 that come from the special, but also have like an arc of its own in terms of the 5.
And there's a lot of like uniquely her, like your child's experiences.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Because in the Tonight Show set, like all we know is she was conceived through IVF and then she goes to daycare. We don't know anything about her. She's not a character, right? Which makes sense. I mean, as a baby, but now she's more of a character.
How do you feel about having your kid be an arc in his story that's very public?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I don't do like, you know, I don't show her face on my Instagram. Like all it is back of head always. And I think that like the truth is in any of the stories, it's more about my experience than anything. So like in the special, the story about, you know, her staring at a pumpkin, there's a story about that. But really, if you think about it, it's a joke about me and whether I feel that I deserve to have her in daycare or I should be taking care of her all day. It's not really about her. She doesn't do or not do anything. And
she stares at pumpkins.
She stares at a pumpkin, but like, okay, you know, like she's a 3-month-old staring at a pumpkin. It's like not that weird. And so I think about that when I think about, stories about her is like, I want to be able to, with integrity and honesty, be like, yeah, here's why I'm saying this about her, as opposed to like exploiting her experience in some way.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you choose which parts of your life to put into those sets?
I mean, mostly just what's funny, what strikes me as funny, because there's so much, that it does that. It's just like, I write it down. I try it in rooms where, it doesn't like go public right away. And then I see if I believe in the joke in terms of like the quality of the laugh and the connection I have with the audience. But also then, I can't think of a specific experience where I had a joke that was like murdering on stage. And then I'm like, oh, I can't do this, because I don't want to create World War III with a family member or something.
You've never bombed?
Oh, I bomb all the time. I'm saying if it does really well, but I'm worried about whether it might hurt someone's feelings. That's what I mean. Yeah.
What about the parenting side?
Yeah.
Is so interesting to me.
Okay.
How that works, and because this baby has a biological father also.
Sure.
He was very interested by this.
Yeah. So it's an anonymous donor. And yeah, I mean, I have some stuff about that. Like, so, one is like, I don't go into a room without wondering, like, is he here? Because like, especially I'm a comedian, like my whole friend group of work friends is like guys who need $100 and talk about how much they masturbate. And so I'm like, I probably know this guy. Okay. But yeah, like,
is that the majority of the sperm bank? It's all comedians?
I don't know. I'm just, it could be. I really have no idea. But yeah, totally.
More funny babies.
Yes. Yeah. And she is very funny. So but I mean, it's like an anonymous donor. So, it's not like, I don't mind like saying biological father, but like it's biological person who is part of her conception. Like if we define father as like a person who has a role in her life, that would be me.
But you also have the choice to choose.
Yeah.
You totally ignored that. She wanted you to say something about that.
Well, I was joking, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
yes.
I was kind of lost.
Okay.
Your brain moves too fast for me. I'm getting sidetracked.
Sure. I get it.
But I forgot who was talking about it. They were saying how they get, I think it was Scott Galloway.
Okay.
He was saying it shows a picture of the father.
As a kid.
Oh, as a kid?
Yeah.
And with their IQ score and their different like health markers, and you get to choose who it is.
Right. So you have like baseball card facts. That's how I think of it. So it's like, we knew, but I also think of it as like in the same way that people like lie on dating profiles. Like one of the baseball card facts for the donor is like, he's very into like amateur drag racing. I'm like, that's a guy with DUIs. And then like another was like audio and engineer. And I'm like, he's a DJ.
Wait, you get to know about the father?
Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. The donor. I mean, I'm not going to get hung up on label.
Whatever,
no, it's fine. But I'm just saying, like, we don't know this guy.
You don't get like, this child is going to be this height and it's going to have maybe this color skin or.
Right. I mean, you have like pics and then like, I think some of that stuff.
They could probably do like gene stuff.
Well,
and
you
see
need
what
genetic
the baby
testing.
Will look like. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But like, you definitely have to have like genetic testing. And, so in that way, it's kind of like whatever, better arguably than hooking up with someone because like you're tested in all these different ways like prior or something like that. But
it would be crazy if you could edit the baby. Of like, I actually want it to be like 2 inches taller.
Sure. Yeah. So, wait, but what was the question? Like,
it was more of an observation.
Yeah.
I was wondering if they actually give you the choice because you were saying it's anonymous.
Yeah.
I'm like, if that was me, I'm choosing the best genes I can get my hands on.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, certainly you try, but then it's also like, you're buying sperm. And so like sometimes it's not available. You want to have like options and stuff.
Limited edition.
Yeah. Sure. Exactly. Right. And so it's also like, then you go through the genetic testing and sometimes like that might not work. I mean, my wife was like more kind of driving for this part of our process because she was like the one who froze her eggs and like really had her mind set on how we were going to do it all. So I was like, okay, like all I had to do was like say like, yeah, he seems cute or whatever, Yeah.
There's Like I just said that your brain moves really fast.
Sure.
You used to be a law professor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that inform a lot of your comedy? Because it feels like this very specific brand of intellectual comedy. Almost.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. People sometimes say that and I'm like, okay, but like, I'm just me. And like, sometimes here's the thing. The thing that I find interesting about that is like, when I was a law professor, I also sounded a lot like this. And like, I don't think that this sounds particularly like erudite or academic, like sometimes, but also I remember when I was teaching law, or like even, you know, the more specific is like interviewing for my job to teach law. And I was like, I'm an idiot. Like I say this in the special, but it's 100% true. I taught and won awards for teaching a class that I, as a student, got a C in on a generous B curve. So when people say like, oh, it's so smart, I'm like, I guess, but also like, I wasn't some kind of prodigy. Like I am very good at like getting a goal. I do think that I'm very good at that. And so, you know, for better or worse, sometimes like in this moment, I do feel like I earned the goal of like, I did that special the way that I wanted. I got the Tonight Show at the time that I think is right and all of that. But like, I don't know, like I went into law school. I was like, I want to teach. And like, everybody was like, yeah, you're not going to get that job. And then I figured out how. I don't know, you know?
Why?
Yeah.
How is this the same person that wanted to be a law professor?
Well, I think I wanted to be at the front of the room talking. And I think that was the job that was most available in that way when I was that age. And also when I was in college, this was before law school, I was a research assistant for this professor, Heidi Hurd, who I think now is the dean at, I don't remember where. Oh, she was the dean at Penn Law School at some point. I don't know, but I don't know exactly where she is. But she was like this kind of like amazing Oprah-like presence on stage. And I was like, I want to be that. I want to be you. I want to be your research assistant. I'll do whatever. And so that was modeled for me. And I was like, great, I'll do that. And then when I was in law school, and I went to a very good law school, but I went to like a law school that's sort of like, it's hard. It's like a hard school. I went to the University of Chicago. They're not known for like coddling in any way. And so I was told in no uncertain terms by the professors who were my recommenders. So these were the ones who were the most supportive of me. They're like, listen, because I got this letter in the mail from Hofstra, which was where I would end up working because they were trying this out of the box hiring strategy. And they're like, did you ever want to be a law professor? And I didn't know if it was like spam, but I wanted it badly enough.
I got that email too, by the way.
Right? Totally.
I just didn't respond.
Well, yeah. But I think maybe a lot of other people did because they're like, I don't know what this is. Seems weird. And I was like, but I want it bad enough that I'm going to call the number. And so I remember I called this guy, Julian, who would end up being my colleague.
King?
And Ku.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
I was like, did you send this to like 10 people or 10,000 people? Because I just needed to know that. And he was like, closer to 10. And I was like, great. And the way that they even found me was, despite the fact that I had horrific grades, was like the worst law student. I knew while I was in law school that I wanted to write something on the Law Review, which is like the publication that's like the most prestigious at school. So I did, with the help of my friend Pat Curran, who was the articles editor, and like basically like he didn't write it for me, but like he really guided me to making it good and publishable. So shout out. But anyway, so I had that. And once you have an article that's in a law review, it's searchable on Westlaw, LexisNexis, like those search engines. So when Hofstra Law School was like, I guess for like a number of years prior, they were in the situation, because they're on Long Island, that people who were interviewing were like interviewing with them and then going to like Brooklyn or St. John's because it's closer to the city. And they're like, we don't want to be in that situation. So we're going to try to find people before they go on the market. So they use these search terms of like went to school, you know, whatever to whatever, US News.
They were prospecting prospects.
Exactly. Okay. Right. And so, and that got on the Law Review, had something published, because to them, that was a proxy for being a good student. Okay. In my case, it was not, but I had those data, right? And so then they found me. And then once that happened, I was like, yes, I will interview. And once that happened, I was like, I am going to get this job. And that's when all of the professors who were my recommenders were like, you're not gonna. And I was like, watch me. And I wasn't sure that I would, but I was like committed enough that, you know, I set up the practice job talk, like the moot, that's what they called it, job talk. And I don't even know, but I got it. And
it's so cool that you do know how you can trace back of like, this is how I got on Fallon. This is how I became a law professor.
Yeah.
This is how this happened.
Right. Well, and the thing is, it's like, you know, I don't mind sharing any of this insider process because even sharing it, it's like, but anyone listening, which I mean, if you want to do exactly what I did, I literally gave you all the steps, but like get to work. Because it's not, even if you know all the steps, like it's still doing all of that.
I mean, you still need the email from Julian.
Well, yeah, but right. And you have to do the law review article to set that up. You know what I mean?
It's such a surprising take because
yeah,
all the time I hear you're in the room because you deserve it, because you made it.
Yeah.
And it seems like every step of the way, even the way you're saying, I published an article in the law review.
Yeah.
And I went and got this job.
Yeah.
How do you end up saying, but like I shouldn't have been there?
Well, I don't think
and why would you want to say that also? Because you totally should have been there.
Yeah, that's the thing is like, have I ever suffered from like the imposter syndrome of like, oh, but you got it. Like, here's the thing. And this is like also what I love about comedy is like, because it's either they laughed or they didn't, right? And the reason I say that is because like, if I think back to how I got on Fallon, it was the festival that I got into off the wait list that gave me the spot that I happened to do well because of listening to the set 2 before me where I noticed that there was a CDC woman, did crowd work with her, spun that into a joke that was relevant, and then that got me the room, right? But then they really laughed big and it made an impression. But if I was still in my head about, oh, but I'm only here because of the wait list, then I would have lost because I wouldn't have been in the mindset of being able to like really rise to the occasion. And so even when I think about the Fallon thing, I could think, you know, I'm just the waitlist candidate, right? I mean, first of all, why is a comedian ever on Fallon? It's because some actual celebrity canceled. And so you could be in your head about that if you want to be, right? In the same way that I was much younger at this point when I was a law teacher, a law professor, and I would get in my head about like, you know, I'm not smart enough. I don't deserve to be here. They really just didn't understand my grades, which was an actual concern because the University of Chicago Law School has an inexplicably difficult to understand grading system, which is, I'll explain it to you, on a scale of 155 to 180. Why? Literally, I have no idea.
Sounds good to me.
Sure. Yeah. And nobody really gets a 180. It's like, you know, legend has it somebody once, or 190. Nobody gets a 190, but a 180 and above is an A, but the average is a 177. All of these are not intuitive at all numbers to mean what they mean. And there's a literal legend at the bottom of the report card of the transcript that explains what each of the grades are. But anyway, I was convinced, and honestly, I'm still convinced, that I got my job because the people on the hiring committee didn't understand what the grades meant. Because if they had understood what the grades meant, they wouldn't have given me the job if they cared about grades. And when I first, like after that phone call to Julian, the next thing I did, I sent my stuff and then I was like, hey, I'm going to send you my transcript. Because I was like, I don't want to go down this road and have it be so far down and then they see the transcript and they're like, oh, never mind. But so I sent it and I was like, okay, you got it? And they're like, yep, sure, whatever. And the reason that I'm convinced that it was this is because like years later, I was on the hiring committee at school. We're looking at a candidate. He was great. Everybody loved him. And he went to like Yale or whatever, something impressive, but he got like B's. And there was an actual conversation of like, but do you think we should hire him? He got B's. And it was the person who was the most supportive of my candidacy. And I was like, that is the most ironic thing that you hired me and you were so supportive of me because you didn't understand my grades, which is honestly the best, like funniest thing because like then you got a bad grade in understanding grades because like you clearly care about them, but you didn't care about them with me. And I think it's the only reason is you didn't understand what they meant.
That's interesting that you went there and not to like imposter syndrome of like,
well, yeah,
let me hide.
No. Totally. Well, I already had the job, you know?
That seems like overly developed imposter syndrome. It's like, it's so specific.
Totally.
It's because of the grade.
But I'm saying like, it's like
they see the 150, 155. They're like, wow, how did she do this?
Right.
Like, what the hell? Like, I didn't even know they could give him 150.
Right. Totally. But I just mean by that like, I think it's over time recognizing that like going in through a side door, whatever that means for you, could be your superpower rather than this thing that's like shameful. And honestly, to bring it all the way back, in a way, it's not that different from come to Mariah, even though you're not religious, we get you, right? Even though you're different from everybody else. And it's not exactly the same, but it's almost like, yeah, there's room for you in this community, even though you're a waitlist person, even though you didn't have the grades that the rest of the professors have or whatever it is, even though you're less Shomer Shabbos, or I'm very Shomer Nagia though. But you know, whatever, that's the thing about lesbianism. They don't talk about. Listen, no mixed dancing, never did, never wanted to, but you know, just saying.
There you go. That easily makes up for it.
Totally. So anyway, yeah.
Out of all of that, my question is still, because it seems like this big dissonance. If you believe that this only happened because this thing only happened because of that, this only happened because of that, then you don't go and make your own special and make an amazing special and end up on these things.
Yeah.
So what's motivating all of it? What's the goal?
I think that like some of what I've said is like in the past. Like I happen to like remember the details of my own life like nobody needs to, you know, in such detail.
That is a superpower.
Yeah, sure. Right. Just ask my wife. I'm sure she really loves reveling in each of those details. But like, you know, so I think that I've grown, you know, from the person who only sees it as like, oh, I'm the wait. I don't think of it that way. I think like, you know what? Wouldn't it? Because here's what it is. I love like the thing in a movie or a television show that like really makes me cry. My favorite movie is Jerry Maguire. And the reason for that is like, I love an underdog story. And so if ever there's an opportunity for me to be an underdog in whatever way, I'm like, let's go. Because that's the story that I love to watch. And what an honor to be able to live it, right? And so I think that's the answer to your question. Then it becomes like, okay, and we make the special, because the underdog element of it is, why did they even ask me to headline this theater? You know?
Because you're a great comic.
Fine, but I don't know that I fully believe that all the time. But what I do know is once they're asking me, it's on me to make it great. And it's on me to, you know, when my friend Josh is like, I want to come out, I want to direct it, I want to do it. I'm like, then it's like, yes, and you can stay in our guest room, right? Like those are like, I have enough, and I've built this, like thanks to, you know, years alive, therapy, whatever it is, I've built this sense of like, now it's the time to really show up. And so to your question about like, what's next? Like this is a big moment. Right? This is like a lot of stuff came out. I felt like Beyonce last Thursday where I'm like dropping, you know, so much content all of a sudden and seemingly out of nowhere. And also I just feel like Beyonce. No, I'm kidding. But also like, then it's a question of like, okay, so the iron arguably is hot. What do we do with it? And I think it's, you keep going, you know, you keep like making stuff and doing the thing that thankfully I really do love, which is like trying to make the stories of my life digestible for people in a way that makes them relate and laugh and feel better about their day and their life. That's really what I want to do, you know?
So why? What's the point of all of it?
I mean, because I enjoy it. It's like really like, it's because that feels like the most expressed, materialized version of me. And I just have always wanted to get there. Like my first ever memory ever in my whole life was me staring out into space at like the parking lot next to the apartment building where we lived in Fort Lee, New Jersey. And my mother is like, Elizabeth, what are you thinking about? And I said, Mommy, one day today will be a long time ago. And I mean, my mother was like, excuse me, I have to go call my sister
That's
and
so deep.
brag, right, about, my little genius over here. And I'm not saying that, whatever. But that aside, I think that I've always had this obsession of like, I want to capture this moment now because later reflecting on it is going to be epic and artistic and creative. And I don't know where that desire comes from. But what I do know is that I have this obsessive need to document it and to just like tell the stories of my life and it's work to get them in such a way that it's consolidated and like, everybody can like see themselves in it, or all of that takes work and craft. But that's what I've always wanted to do,
She's the main character.
Yeah.
The last thing, is there any message that you would have for anyone who's listening?
Yeah. So the first time I ever got on stage, it was in an improv theater. And because it was in an improv theater, I was asked, what is the title of your show? And really, I was just doing stand-up, and any stand-up, which I wasn't really at the time, I was just doing it for the first time, would just be like, oh, you could just say my name. Like, it's just Liz Glazer, whatever. But at the time, they were asking me for a title, and I was like, I guess I have to come up with a title. And the title that I gave was Everybody Loves Me. And the reason that I gave that title was because that was the mantra or thing I had to convince myself of in order to get up on that stage to begin with, is everybody loves me. And even if they don't, even if it's demonstrably untrue that they love me, what I need is to believe that they love me so that I take off the table having to make them love me. And so I think of this message in every context. In a social context, I used to be a very shy person. I spent 9th grade like literally not talking. I came home from school one day in 9th grade and I told my mother, I was like, I can count the number of words I said out loud today because I was like so shy and just socially anxious. But it was because I was trying to prove like, here's why you should love me. And anytime that I've had the attitude in a room of like, everybody loves me, I don't have to worry about making them. And again, sometimes I'm like, and that guy does not. But I need to figure out how to even see that guy who hates me loves me, because I can't have my energy spent on trying to like make him change his opinion or whatever. And I think about this, like, I would say that message, especially because this is like, a Jewish podcast, like, and we were talking about, Orthodox and non-Orthodox in Orthodox spaces, and that theme is like, I think like in terms of, being gay or trans in a space where the rules say not to, it's like, what if you just like walked into that room like everybody loves you, even if they don't, because the thing is, then they will. I really believe that. And it's not that they're saying like, oh, let's go back and revise the Shulchan Aruch so that it incorporates Liz and her whole identity. I'm not, but also it's like, it's not the point. It's just like, ultimately, when we're coming together, and I come into those spaces for a comedy show, we don't have to all agree about everything. But what I need to do is bring the energy that like, you love me, and that's all I'm convincing myself of so that I can entertain you. And I really think that like anybody, you can use that in like talking to people at Kiddush too. It doesn't have to be just like performing on a stage.
I hate Kiddush.
Well, try it this way, and maybe you'll love it.
Yeah, that's a special message. Wow.
Thanks.
And I think you're so cool and you're crushing it.
The same, DJ. Thank you
for coming and
spending the time with us.
Oh
my God, it was such a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Yes, it really was. Thank you.